If you were to ask me to sum up the Adeptus Mechanicus and its relationship with the Imperium of Man, I would start by comparing it to a Russian nesting doll. For the Mechanicus is undeniably an empire within the Imperium. If asked to sum up the Mechanicus in a single word, my choice would be paradoxical. For the Adeptus Mechanicus is indisputably a part of the Imperium, and yet, thanks to custom and ancient treaty, it is separate from it as well. The tech priests of the Mechanicus worship the Emperor, but in a way that many Ministorum priests and many Inquisitors consider borderline heretical, and some consider it more than simply borderline. It is an organization undisputably dedicated to science and logic, and yet its every facet is simultaneously steeped in religious doctrine and ritual. As you can see, the Adeptus Mechanicus is incredibly difficult to summarize. For this reason, instead of one video, there will be 3, each devoted to a certain aspect of the Adeptus Mechanicus: its organization and the forces under its command, its history, and the subject of this first video, its faith. I feel it appropriate to start here. For the Mechanicus, more than any other imperial institution, including the Adeptus Ministorum, is defined by the unique nature of its religion, the cult Mechanicus. The first thing to understand about the cult Mechanicus is that technically the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus do not worship the Emperor, for the Emperor is not synonymous with the machine god, the primary deity of their cult. The machine god is all-powerful, all-knowing, and is the source of all knowledge in the universe. Knowledge, as far as the Mechanicus is concerned, is the spark of divinity. Knowledge is therefore the most precious thing, and any source of knowledge, from an ancient text to a data slate, is to the tech priests of Mars the equivalent of a holy relic. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, the ultimate goal in life is to pursue knowledge and acquire as much of it as you can to understand the glory of the machine god. According to the cult Mechanicus, all knowledge in the universe already exists. It is just a matter of time before the Adeptus Mechanicus eventually discovers it. Ironically, this means that even though the Adeptus Mechanicus is all about science and technology, the Mechanicus is actually disinclined towards research and the advancement of new ideas. For them, the quest for knowledge is less about discovery and more about the recovery of what was lost. For you see, long before the Imperium, long before even the Age of Strife, there was a period of time where humanity was at its apex, technologically, socially, culturally. Its glories surpassed those of the Imperium, even at its very height during the Great Crusade. Then, at some undetermined point in time, a spate of warp storms spread across the entire galaxy, isolating sectors and even individual worlds from one another, thus bringing to an end humanity's first great interstellar civilization, and marking the beginning of what is now called Old Night, or the Age of Strife. The period before this golden age of humanity, is since become referred to as the Dark Age of technology. Not because it was a terrible period, but because so much knowledge from that time has been lost. As a result, recovering the lost knowledge or technology from this period, known collectively as archaeotech, is one of the driving goals of the Adeptus Mechanicus. As such, the Mechanicus is constantly sending out expeditions known as explorator fleets to scour the galaxy and rediscover the lost knowledge. Given all the hostile aliens that inhabit the galaxy, this is far more dangerous than it might seem at first blush. If an explorator fleet is lucky, the world that it stumbles on is an abandoned, long-lost colony of ancient humanity, and not, in fact, a secret Necron tomb world. If it turns out to be the latter, Emperor help the poor fools if they happen to disturb whatever is sleeping beneath the surface. If an explorator team is extremely lucky, though, and I'm talking insanely low odds lucky, they might just discover a standard template construct, or STC. These are essentially the holy grail of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Back in the Dark Age of technology, when humanity was first colonizing the stars, Every prospective colony was provided with STCs, each one containing all the information that the colonists would need to create and maintain the technology that they would use to make sure that their colony was sustainable in the long term. Everything from how to farm a field to how to build a fusion reactor. Essentially, the full gamut of human technical knowledge. And this is why STCs are so highly prized by the Mechanicus. But I'm getting off topic. In the Imperium of Man, hundreds of different planets worship the Emperor in hundreds of different ways and aspects. But if the Mechanicus does not believe that the Emperor is synonymous with the machine god, then how is it not heretical? Well, first of all, many within the Imperial Church and the Inquisition actually do consider the Mechanicus heretics, and would love nothing better than to purge them from the Imperium. Officially, the Mechanicus gets around this by saying that the Emperor, in life, was the living manifestation of the machine god's will, the Omnissiah. In reality, the real reason why the Mechanicus is tolerated is because they are simply too badly needed by the wider Imperium. The Tech Priests of Mars are the curators of all technical scientific knowledge known to humanity, as well as one of the biggest providers of the weapons and material that the Imperium needs to fight off its innumerable enemies. They are, quite simply, far too necessary to be disposed of. Regardless, according to the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Emperor, in the aspect of the Omnissiah, was the embodiment of knowledge and had selected humanity to be his chosen people, which is at least in keeping with the Imperial Creed's notion of humanity having the right to rule the universe by manifest destiny. In keeping with the parallels between the cult Mechanicus and Christianity, in addition to an equivalent of God as the Father and the Omnissiah as Christ, there is also the Mechanicus equivalent of the Holy Spirit, the so-called motive force. And this brings us to the concept of machine spirits. According to the cult Mechanicus, every machine has a small extension of the machine god that inhabits it and makes it work. The best way I know of to sum up the notion of machine spirits is to use the example of an electric light bulb. We know that a light bulb works the way it does is because when we screw it into a socket, we are connecting the light bulb to a wire, and the wire itself is connected at some point to a power source. Thus, when we flip a wall switch, we are either connecting the wire to that power source, thus to turn on the light bulb, or we are disconnecting the wire from the power source, thus turning the light bulb off. This is our real-world understanding of how a light bulb works. In 40K, a Martian tech priest will insist that yes, electricity is important, and yes, connection to a power source matters, but he will insist, and indeed he will believe, that the real reason that the light bulb functions as intended is because there's a little spirit living inside it, and that he, the tech priest, has done his due diligence to appease said spirit through prayer and the ritual applications of oils or incense. He will insist, therefore, that unless this ritualistic appeasement is done, and done regularly, then, even if everything else is in order, the light bulb will not function as intended. And this applies to every technological or mechanical device in 40K, from a las gun to a tank to a suit of power armor to the plasma core of a starship. They all have machine spirits in need of appeasement. And since the Martian tech priests are the only ones, with a few exceptions, that are fully inducted into the mysteries of the blessed machine, they are the only ones with the know-how to maintain the technology that the Imperium of Man is so dependent on. Convenient, isn't it? In fairness to the Martian tech priests, they do genuinely believe what they're saying. And given the fact that in 40K there is the warp, a dimension that responds directly to the desires and beliefs of material sentient beings, for all we know, there probably are machine spirits inside of everything, from cars to cogitators to plasma pistols. Of course, trying to confirm or refute this belief is easier said than done. For example, you'd be hard-pressed to find an Imperial Guardsman who'd be willing to take a chance to prove your theory by foregoing his daily blessings of his las rifle, the weapon that he relies upon to keep himself alive in battle. Ultimately, the tenets and beliefs of the Mechanicus can be best summed up by the 16 universal laws, 2 sets of 8 commandments each, known as the mysteries and the warnings. Beginning with the mysteries, the first, second, and third universal laws are pretty straightforward. They simply lay out how the Mechanicus defines life and sentience. Life is directed motion, the spirit is the spark of life, sentience is the ability to learn the value of knowledge. The fourth universal law reads, intellect is the understanding of knowledge. To the Mechanicus, a person's intellect is measured by the amount of knowledge that they can comprehend and utilize. For example, someone might know that if you flip a switch, a light will turn on, but someone who knows why the light turns on when you flip the switch and understands how electricity works will be regarded as someone of superior intellect. Sentience is the basest form of intellect, the fifth universal law. Building on the fourth universal law, the Mechanicus asserts that as sentience is fairly commonplace in a galaxy with multiple races capable of sapience, that mere sentience is the bare minimum, the lowest common denominator. One can only achieve a superior intellect through the acquisition and comprehension of knowledge. The sixth universal law. Understanding is the true path to comprehension. Comprehension among the Mechanicus is a state similar to that of enlightenment in Buddhism, a transcendent state of being that one achieves a level of intellect that encompasses all knowledge. 7. Comprehension is the key to all things. There is a great deal of debate surrounding the seventh universal law, mostly over the meaning of the key to all things. Some assert that this is purely a figurative expression, while others claim that its meaning is literal, that when one achieves comprehension of all knowledge in the universe, one may be able to unlock and manipulate its secrets at will. The eighth universal law, and last of the mysteries, the Omnissiah knows all, comprehends all. This last mystery enshrines the Omnissiah as the supreme being, the only one capable of comprehending all knowledge in the universe. Next comes the ninth universal law and the first warning. The alien mechanism is a perversion of the true path. To wit, technology of Xenos manufacture is verboten and of no value to humanity. That is the official line, though whether or not this commandment is indeed honored depends on the tech priest in question. There are several borderline heretics who are of the opinion that Xenos technology can be adapted and made beneficial for humanity. Such tech priests rarely last long, especially when the Inquisition gets wind of their activities and their beliefs. The 10th universal law. The soul is the conscience of sentience. Knowledge and the ability to comprehend it are indeed paramount virtues, but they can be easily turned to wicked means if one lacks morality. 11. A soul can be bestowed only by the Omnissiah. 12. The soulless sentience is the enemy of all, a blunt and uncompromising prohibition against the development of artificial intelligence, which some credit with bringing about the end of the dark age of technology and the beginning of the age of strife. The 13th universal law. The knowledge of the ancients stands beyond question. Here the Mechanicus affirms its focus on the past rather than the future, and its low opinion of experimentation outside of carefully and rigidly controlled conditions. Obviously, the tech priests of Mars have never heard of Arthur C. Clarke's first law of science fiction. When a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. 14. The machine spirit guards the knowledge of the ancients. As the Mechanicus believes that all knowledge already exists in the universe waiting to be rediscovered, the fact that each machine or piece of technology contains a machine spirit, a fragment of the will of the machine god, renders said machines and technology sacred. 15. Flesh is fallible, but ritual honors the machine spirit. To the Mechanicus, while humans may be the machine god's chosen people, their organic nature, their flesh, renders them weak and fallible. This belief is the reason why many adherents of the cult Mechanicus, especially high-ranking tech priests, often sport quite drastic and extreme bionic augmentations, the replacement of organs, limbs, Sometimes even their entire bodies, save for their brain, may be replaced with bionics. The tech priests believe that it is through such augmentation that they strip themselves of their weaknesses and bring themselves into closer communion with their god. The 15th law also asserts that only through the correct and prescribed rituals can these weaknesses be purified, and the truly enlightened adherent of the cult Mechanicus to interact with the machine spirit. Failing to perform the proper rituals dishonors the machine spirit and is regarded as an almost criminal act among the priesthood. And finally, the 16th universal law. To break with ritual is to break with faith. As humans are imperfect organic beings, a true servant of the Omnissiah must rely on ritual more so even than understanding. Every step of a ritual, whether it be the anointing of sacred oil, the turning of a screw, the pressing of a button, or a line of ritualistic chant recited in Binaric, the secret language of the tech priests, is there for a reason. Even the slightest deviation from the ritual can end only, at best, the failure of the machine to function, at worst, the unleashing of uncontrollable forces and utter disaster. Such are the beliefs of the priests of Mars. But as I said at the beginning of this video, the Adeptus Mechanicus is more than just a cult. It is an empire within the Imperium of Man. As such, it has its own organization, its own hierarchy, and, especially important in a grim dark future where there is only war, its own armed forces. And these shall be the subject of Part 2 of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Until then. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and check out our website at studiobrainstorm.net. And if you have a story that you think is worth telling, we are more than happy to help you publish it. Thank you, and have a nice day.